I'm with Christopher Hastings of Cedar Grove Residential Treatment Center. And Chris, thanks for joining us today. I'm just going to go through and want to learn a little bit more about Cedar Grove. Maybe you can tell us about Cedar Grove, perhaps what you do here, how it got its start.
Cedar Grove is a 36-bed residential facility for juvenile boys ages 12 to 18.
Okay.
36 beds currently. We are always looking to expand. By the name of residential, obviously the boys live here, they go to school here, they don't ever get to leave unless it's on pass or with their parents.
Okay.
We've been here for about 20 years now. We've gone through several corporations, different buyout companies and everything, but 20 years working with sex offenders.
Mm-hmm.
In the early days they also worked with conduct disordered, and we found that working with conduct disordered and sex offenders, two different populations, did not mesh really well, because the conduct disordered kids say, well, at least I'm not a sex offender, and the sex offender kids say, well, at least I didn't rob somebody or something like that.
Okay.
So we found that a pure population just works better.
Okay.
We have 4 units, and they are divided up by age and ability, and we keep the oldest boys, our dormitory is 2 stories, we keep the oldest boys on the bottom floor, and the 3 other units up on the top floor, just for safety reasons.
Now, how did the residents get referred here to begin with? How does all that work?
A variety of ways. Our company has a marketing department called KidLink, who go out and talk to judges and probation officers, and so some referrals come through them. The courts may recommend residential treatment. They may recommend, intensive psychiatric or something else as well. And so, based on those needs, KidLink will filter out the referrals to different facilities. We also have some parents who, through word of mouth or looking us up on the internet, will call us and say, "I've got a kid with this problem. What can I do?" And we'll work with them that way.
Okay.
And then occasionally, since Tennessee insurance has been split up into different companies, we have some companies that work really well with us, and they'll actually refer kids. So.
Now, these are juvenile sex offenders. Can you tell us a little bit about some of their offenses, what they do?
The offenses can range, and it's really odd. You can almost tell the areas that they come from based on how severe the crime is or how severe they've reacted to the crime.
Okay.
We've got some that have committed what most people think of as rape, where they've bribed a child or used physical force to hold a child down and perform, various sexual acts. We have some who it was experimentation. Maybe the child was 12 and our resident was 14, which is a big age range in Tennessee law, and it was more of a you show me mine, I'll show you yours. Some of it was, and we've got some stuff that's actually relatively minor, some sexual harassment at school, some grabbing of butts or breasts or something like that, and probably 20 years ago wouldn't have anybody really batted an eye, but in our culture right now they're kind of going on.
Things have changed.
Yeah. And we've actually had a few that have may have acted out with animals, sexually acted out with animals, and not long ago we had a child who was referred due to excessive viewing of pornography. Okay. And so it kind of runs the gambit of any type of sexual offensive behavior. We don't take anyone who has severely physically harmed their victim in committing the act, other than the trauma involved of actual rape. But if they've severely beaten someone, used excessive violence, anyone who has really raped an adult, we generally don't take them. We find generally the courts put them in a detention center. So all the victims were either the resident's age or younger. So.
You had mentioned before about how there are residents with different ability levels. Can you say a little bit more about that?
We take residents with IQ levels of 70 or above. And sometimes what we're seeing a lot more these days in the past year or two, we don't get the pure sex offender anymore. We get children that are severely, mood disordered, some psychotic features, and a big trend that we're seeing is kids with some level of PDD. So they're special needs in a way, and
PDD, pervasive developmental disorder.
Occasionally we'll get Asperger's syndrome is something we're definitely seeing a lot more of in our residents, and so we divide them up in the units for age and ability, because a child may be 15 physically, mentally be 10, so we kind of have separated out, and then each unit is covered by a therapist. So another issue that I look at is the therapists are all great in their own right, but they're 4 completely different styles, and I like that.
Sure.
Because when I meet a resident when they come in for admission, I can determine, if there's not a big educational or cognitive gap there, I can determine who I think they'll work best with.
Right. So it's a matter of fit, who they would fit best with. And
occasionally we have to swap them. They've been here for a couple of weeks. It's not working on one unit, and we'll swap them to another. So.
Okay. Now I'm sure you're asked from time to time why these kids do this type of stuff. What are some reasons, do you think, just generally, anything off the top of your head?
I think a lot of people want to just automatically assume, they must have been abused themselves. And that's generally not the case. Only about half of our kids were sexually abused. We do see occasionally some kids who grow up in a family culture with poor boundaries or no boundaries, where they watched mom have sex with people in the living room, and it was just always out there. Or dad started watching pornography with them at age 8.
Okay, this was just the norm of that family. Right.
And generally, those are the kids you see that were just more inappropriate interactions with a sibling. There was experimentation.
Okay.
Some have severe anger problems. Others were bored. For lack of a better reason. They grew up in America in this time and age where sex is everywhere, and the mentality is, well, you must be having sex because everyone on TV is having sex. So if you're not having sex, there's something wrong with you, so they go out and do something.
Miss Caldo, line 1. Miss Caldo, line 1.
Okay.
Turn that off.
Do you find that these kids that you have here have problems with impulse control? Is that a common type of thing?
It's common. Impulse control. They'll come in with diagnoses ranging from oppositional conduct, intermittent explosive, ADHD, bipolar. But really the core of it is they've just never learned to control themselves. There's no emotional, no way to regulate those emotions. And so what we find is constantly they get an impulse and they do it.
Okay. So how do you go about helping these kids? Well, first of all, how long are they here? And then how do you go about helping them?
Our program is designed to last about 9 months. And that's from start until the day they walk out the door, with everything in between. I've had children come in before and do really well, don't act up, don't cause any problems at all, and they get out in 6 months. Fortunately, we have some who want to come in, kind of do their own thing, don't really pay attention or follow rules, and their stay could be a lot longer.
Sure.
And we really do sort of leave it up to them. Our program is based on 10 goals, and of course more goals can branch from that based on the individual, and we meet these goals through workbooks, group assignments, and more of just actually living it. Learning it's the easy part, and they have to demonstrate they're making these changes. All
right, so in terms of counseling or therapy, is there any of that done here?
Oh yeah, we do group therapy every day with each unit, so that's every day, and then we also have individual sessions and family sessions once a week. Family sessions may be over the phone because some of our families are from far east Tennessee or far west. And some may, we've actually got a few residents from West Virginia and Virginia, so they participate via phone. We try to get them here as much as possible, but not surprisingly, that a lot of our families here are not very well off, so we're generally working 2 or 3 jobs, can't afford transportation. So we do group every day, individual and family, at least 1 hour a week of each. Also, we have a recreational program here. Try to incorporate some recreational therapy type things, although I don't have certified recreational therapists.
Yeah.
We always try to put a theme to each activity. Also, we have a jobs program here, vocational activities and stuff like that.
Okay.
So, and then another big thing that our bachelor's level staff will work on are social skills, because surprisingly, a lot of these kids have no idea how to do very basic things. You know, as basic as what to do with free time. They don't know how to do recreational planning, leisure planning, and that's actually a really dangerous risk factor for these kids, is boredom. They get bored and their mind starts to go in weird places. But so social skills can also range how to fill out a job application, how to keep a checkbook, how to have conversations with people.
All right.
You know, a lot of, you know, since we work with guys, you know, we do try to focus on having appropriate conversations with females, how to have an appropriate dating relationship.
Sure.
Because they have no clue. And so that's another form of therapy that actually, it's a lot more informal because the bachelor's level staff do it. It's once all the therapists are gone, so the kids can just kind of lay back and have this social hour of talking about these various things.
Okay.
So.
How about education? I mean, they're being pulled out of school basically to be placed here. Do they go to school here? Or?
We are a fully accredited school.
Okay.
We have 4 classrooms, and the kids, we break those kids up into separate classes and based on ability as well.
All right.
So, you know, we number our units 1, 2, 3, and 4. So boys 1 and boys 2 may intermix during class time because, you know, somebody may be really good at math but suck at English, and so that's, you know, so we sort of mix them all up based on their abilities.
Okay.
But they go year round. Summer school is spent mostly on elective credits, art, PE, computer science, typing, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But they do a regular school schedule from August to June.
Now, what are some of some of the ethical challenges you run into, or any legal types of challenges that you have to contend with at a place like this?
Yeah, a lot. Some of our kids are custodians of the state through DCS, and we sign confidentiality agreements at admission.
All right.
The problem with that is DCS, either there's a high rotation, people get promoted easily, so you constantly will get a new worker and not know. So somebody will show up needing to see, you know, John, and, you know, we don't know this person, but they got DCS credits, and so we've gotten to where we have to sign a blanket confidentiality with DCS.
Okay.
If DCS credit, you know, or, you know, credentials, then they can visit the child. Another issue is, you know, parents will come in to visit, and there's 34 other residents, 35 other residents with other families, so we make the parents sign confidentiality agreements that you may recognize a child or a family, but so that that actually has been an issue in the past.
Hadn't even thought of that.
2 families recognized each other and unfortunately didn't like each other, and so that was a problem.
Okay.
Another thing is too, you know, we're not a locked door facility. We're level 3, but we don't lock a single door here.
Okay.
Occasionally, we get people riding their bikes up the streets and pulling here, not knowing what it is, and we got all our residents outside playing, so there's a confidentiality issue. We're in view of university apartments, and they can look in.
Sure.
So those kind of things, people constantly are calling in, wanting to know how a child is doing, a progress report, and it's hard to check credentials over a phone, so what we have now is a 4-digit code for each child, and it's actually the last 4 of their social.
Okay.
So if they don't know that code, we say we can either confirm or deny that anyone is here.
Sure.
But and then of course, you know, the normal stuff with any mental health places. You know, you fax things to a judge and hope it's going to the the assistant. And you'll get an email about something, and you know, we have an email server for our company, and who are constantly asking questions about kids. So there's that level of you know, confidentiality, but we do try to protect their identities as much as possible.
Okay.
If somebody was to show up here, we don't tell them what we do here.
All right.
We've had neighbors, you know, our back end of the property is all on residential space, so we have people coming over, going, what is this place? I just moved in here, and we just say we're a private school. Since we are fully accredited, we can say we're a private school.
Okay.
That way, just alleviates any concerns.
Okay. Now, what are some of the biggest challenges in doing this kind of work?
Well, I think the big thing is the kids are referred by family, by courts, by insurance companies. Rarely do they want to come here. So you're automatically working with a resistant client who is probably not motivated to work.
Sure.
Because of, you just got to get past the point that sex feels good, and what they did felt good. They may feel guilty about it, but there was a physical pleasure to it.
Right.
So automatically you're working from an addictions or substance abuse standpoint, where they're coming off this pleasurable thing. They're resistant. They don't want to work. They're away from home, so they're homesick. So right off the bat, whenever you get a new kid, you know that's what you're dealing with.
Do you have anybody run away? Try to run away, or?
Surprisingly not. And we have a few from time to time who, due to their lack of anger management, or they view something as way more negative than it is.
Sure.
Teenagers blowing things out of proportion.
Yep.
They may run. They always come back. We've never had anyone stay an extended period of time away. The city police work well with us. They know what we do here. If for some reason a resident was to run, we call them up. And our concern more when they run is not for the safety of the community, but for their own safety. Because they don't know where they are. Right. They don't know anyone here. And should someone know what Cedar Grove does, and the kid says something, I ran away from Cedar Grove, there's such a negative stigma from society. So our urgency to get the resident back is for his own safety. Sure. But for the most part, our residents, they like it here. We don't have a great deal of behavioral problems that are, say, aggressive.
That's what I was going to ask you about. If there are any situations where somebody just kind of explodes and you have to physically restrain them. I mean, does that happen at all?
That does happen. All of our staff that work with residents, including our interns, will be trained in a physical restraint technique. It's handled with care. It's certified nationally, and we are retrained every year. And it is nothing that we like to do. We don't like doing it at all. We're actually ashamed when we have to get to that point, because it means everything else has failed. Right. But occasionally, a resident may be so out of control that we need to protect them or protect others around them, and it involves sort of a modified hold where they can't move their arms. It's a perfectly safe technique, but that is the last resort. We work on verbal de-escalation, stimulus reduction. We identify triggers for these kids when they get angry, and angry is really what we're looking the most at, is anger. And we also help them what works for you. Some kids like to draw. Some kids they just put me in a corner, leave me alone for 20 minutes, I'll come back and I'll talk. And, we train all our staff, and we learn something new. If he discloses something in therapy or to me, hey, just want to let you know, give him a magazine and he'll be fine. Let him look through a Time magazine, let him read something, he'll be good.
Just kind of de-escalate.
Exactly. Our goal is to help the kids de-escalate themselves. As soon as we have to put our hands on them, we failed them. So we really are as hands-off as we can be. Our goal is to one day never have to touch a child. So.
Now, what if somebody wanted to go into this field, this line of work? What would you say, just from a training experience, volunteer experiences, how should they prepare for doing this kind of work?
Volunteer is tough. I've tried to think of ways to use volunteers. I've had a lot of students approach me going, I just want to get my foot in the door. It's really tough. The one thing I'd recommend, if a person with a bachelor's degree can free up the time during grad school to work or take a semester off and come here and work as one of our direct care staff, that is probably the best way to get an idea. That is the hardest job here. The resident counselors spend an 8-hour shift with the group. Their job is to watch the residents, interact with them, move them from cafeteria to the rec field or wherever they need to go, and be responsible for the safety of those 8 or 9 residents. And it gives you a lot of on-the-job training on how to interact with them, and how to do some basic behavior mod
Okay.
stuff, you know, and just socialize with them.
Sure.
You know, these kids need role models.
Mhm.
It's a big thing, and our resident counselors can be those role models.
Sure.
And
Mhm.
you know, you can tell when it really works because the kids enjoy being with a resident counselor who knows the rules,
Mhm.
keeps those rules, but is also approachable and wants to help.
And in fact, they're probably going to be the ones who end up spending the most time with
Mhm.
the residents. Is that true?
That is true.
Okay.
Their entire shift is spent with residents, other than breaks, of course. But where a therapist may, you know, be in their office doing paperwork, answering phone calls, they're away from the children. And same way with teachers. You know, teachers have planning periods and all that, but the resident counselors are with them for the entire. Their job is to watch them and interact with them.
Okay.
So I would recommend that if somebody just wants to get a good experience on what is it like to be in a residential. Obviously, we do an internship with the master's level. You know, working with offenders it takes a special person. Now, you know, the resident counselors, the interns, they don't directly work with the offending issues.
Okay.
You know, they're more behavioral.
All right.
But you know, getting into the, you know, when I hire a therapist, I don't necessarily look for a person with past experience.
Okay.
I like more their interpersonal style. The interview is the big thing.
Okay.
You know, you gotta like kids. You gotta understand kids, and want to help them. I think more than other fields, you're going to have a lot of disappointment in this field. You're going to work with somebody, they're going to lose their cool, not meet their scores. I can talk about that a little bit later. Or at the worst case scenario, you know, do something sexual again.
Right.
So it's almost will feel like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back.
Exactly.
Some days.
It can be very frustrating.
It can be very frustrating. But, you know, I worked in the Department of Corrections with adults 2 or 3 years before working with kids. Working with the residents is probably the most satisfying thing I could ever think of. I swore up and down in college I would never work with kids. I don't want to work with kids. And, well, you know, I was a little late today because I was down there goofing off with some kids. Just, you know, they've kind of energy about them. You know, and when you find the right way to work with a kid, it energizes you.
Sure.
And you start to realize this is why I do this.
Right.
And so, and the great thing about kids is you see the change.
Exactly.
You know, a kid comes in here, he may cuss you out. I'm not working this program. I don't like this. And in a very short amount of time, has calmed down, is making good behavioral scores. And then in 6 to 9 months, is a completely different individual.
And probably more of a possibility of change as opposed to adults.
Yeah, when you're an adult in this field, for the most part, you're set in your ways.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it helps too that with a lot of the kids that we get, they're not pedophiles. They're not fixed in their sexual interest. They're learning what their sexual interests are.
Sure.
So, you know, when you teach them healthy relationships and that's what they want, you see them become young men.
Yeah.
And, you know, and we get a lot of residents who'll call us back 2, 3 years later. Hey, I'm married now. Hey, I'm doing this. Hey, I went to college. I'm joining the Marines. You know, and it's a reward that you can't even imagine.
Good stuff.
Exactly. You don't get that working with adults, I don't think. So.
Well, Chris, thanks so much for spending time with us today to tell us a little bit about Cedar Grove, and hope to be working with you in the future.
All right. Thank you.